Welcome back to the Cutaway scene where the conversation is uncut, unfiltered, and unexpected. Listen, this week was clarity check, okay? And we've all been there, all right? The moment when things just stop making sense and you just have to decide if holding on is because you care or because you're scared to let go, okay? Now, before we jump in, shout out to everyone who voted this week, okay? Y'all make this week lit. You guys are lit. We all lit, all right? And I love that for us, okay? Anyway, without further ado, let's get into the poll results. So, this week's poll was which one takes more strength? Letting go or holding on? All right, so the results were split. And honestly, that says a lot about where we are right now, okay? But let's get into it. Let's get into it. All right, 75% of you guys said holding on would take more strength, while 25 says letting go would take more strength. And honestly, I can see why most would say holding on would take more strength because sometimes you're fighting for what you believe in and not just what's in front of you, you know? So, but I can also see why some would say letting go would take more strength because letting go would mean accepting that it's over. And honestly, at least from my point of view, my experience, that's not easy, okay? And, but to each his own, But here's the thing. At some point, clarity does hit you, okay? And you just stop making excuses for other people and you just start paying attention to their actions, their patterns, what they do, right? So you realize consistency is clarity. Because if they keep showing you one way and it's the same thing, that's your answer, right? But let's get into the main topic. So, this week's hot take question was, have you ever outgrown someone but tried to make it work anyway? My hot take on it would be, yes, I have. This is the Cutaway scenes, confessional, okay? Chill. Yes, I have. And I feel like, I guess you can say, I held on a thought of potential of someone, depending on the situation, the history. It's just something that you just see the potential, you see the good in people, So it's like you kind of like overlook what they're giving to you, and you're just like, nah, they can do better. Little Jimmy could do better, Anyways, let's get into some entries, some DMs, okay? So someone says, plenty of times, I always assume people can change. My hot take on that would be, I can definitely agree with you. Same here. I always assume someone could change. It kind of goes off of what I was just kind of talking about with I see the potential in people, and some people like to play on your empathetic side. They like to see that you are caring and you're so giving, and they're just like, let me see how far I can take this, But that's where the clarity comes in, right? Classic. But let's get into some hypotheticals, okay? Hypothetical scenario number 1. You're in a relationship that's not really bad, but it's not moving, right? Do you stay because it's comfortable or do you leave because it's stale? How do you feel about that? My hot take would be, honestly, I feel like at one point of my life that I really can remember, I feel like I would have stayed only because my biggest fear at one point was to start over. I would hate to be leaving one situation to get into another one that was worse than what I left, and that was always something that I was just afraid to do, and now I feel like I'm at a better mindset, a more where I'm actually looking at the big picture, also plenty of fish in the sea, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like now I would say leaving because it's stale. Because it's like at this point, if we're not growing, then we're just not in alignment, and I'm not gonna say, okay, you're just a bad person, you're just not a good person for me, and it's like we're just not meant to be on the same path, and that's why it's stale. And I just feel like we should listen to that sign. And who am I to stop you from your blessings? Because you ain't stopping mine. You not stopping mine, okay? But let's get into hypothetical scenario number 2. All right, you've grown, all right? But some people still treat you like the old you. Do you shrink to keep them comfortable? Or do you keep growing to let the distance happen? What's your hot take on that? My hot take would be, again, I feel like at one point of time, I was just super forgiving. Just, hey, giving my shirt off, my back, okay? We're just giving very much. I would rather shrink myself to make you feel comfortable, because it's just more of like, I just don't want you to feel, it's more of like, I didn't want people to feel like I was being fake, or I was being untrustworthy or unloyal. It was just, I didn't want people to feel because I changed that it just messes up my character. Now, okay, I don't care. Okay, I'm gonna keep growing and let the distance happen. It's like, it's kind of back, like, it's kind of like the first answer I said. If we're not in alignment, we're just bound to just have distance. It's not meant to be. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just going off what's meant to be. What's mine is mine. What's yours is yours. If we are meant to mingle and salsa dance and all that, then call me your partner and put me in a red dress, baby, okay? But anyways. But either way, I feel like both situations does test your clarity. It's like, are you holding on out of love, or is it out of a habit, right? But for me, I feel like I've learned that clarity doesn't always come as a big moment, Sometimes it's quiet, Sometimes one day you wake up and you like, I'm done explaining myself. You know what you're doing. Bye. Like, it's giving. Sometimes you just get a little tap on your shoulder saying, hey, yeah, that person is just not for you, and I don't think you should entertain that person anymore, But I don't know. Growth feels lonely at first, okay? It's always that first initial separation. It gets lonely, but it's worth it, right? But you know what? The peace feels so much better than confusion ever did, okay? And it's like, the older I get, the more I understand that closure doesn't come from conversations. It comes from your decisions. Well, not your decisions, but decisions as a whole, okay? And that's just up to you on how you do it, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, y'all, that is episode 6, Clarity Check. And this is for anyone who has ever had to choose between peace and potential, okay? Because what? Anyways, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for everyone who voted this week, dropping y'all hot takes every week. Y'all are lit, like I said before, okay? Follow the Cutaway scene on Instagram to be part of the next week's poll. Join the conversation for the Hot Take Wednesday. And as always, that's a wrap. And it's the Cutaway scene. Bye!